Oh, no!
Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner, host of the Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level, in which a guest co-host and I discuss the interview of the week and bring out a few of the highlights in a way such that you can use them to raise your own business to the next level. And before I introduce today's guest co-host, I want to mention last week's interview, which was Sean DeFreitas, wonderful designer out of the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, and I had Jennifer Stein, co-founder of Destination I Do Magazine, as the guest co-host. And whenever we have Jennifer, we know it's going to be really dynamic. So definitely suggest you pick that up from last week. And now, without any further ado, today's guest co-host is none other than Sean Low. Hey, Sean, welcome to the show again.
Thank you, Andy. Always happy to be here.
Yeah, man. I love you being on the show so regularly. I really appreciate it. And so everyone knows, if you don't know, Sean's consulting firm, The Business of Being Creative, is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. And Sean's client list includes the who's who of the wedding industry and design community. And Sean and I had just an incredible conversation released earlier in the year, on February 2019. I'll also put a link to it in the show notes. So definitely check out my interview of Sean. And I also recommend that you sign up, subscribe to his mailing list, because he's got a great blog with very thoughtful and inspiring tips and thoughts. So be sure to check that out. Now, this week's guest who we're speaking about is David Adler, CEO and founder of Bizbash, a resource marketplace for event organizers of all types, from corporate and association planners to those who plan high-end personal and social events. And David's site has become the largest media property in the B2B event industry, with nearly 2 million annual user sessions. Dave is a real pro, isn't he, Sean? I mean, talk about a seasoned veteran.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, he's great. And in a relatively short period of time, we covered an enormous amount. So as far as, some of the topics that stuck out to me, Sean, was when he talked about two things here, collaboration artists and social engineering. And the way he talked about that phrase, collaboration artists, is that event organizers are really collaboration artists, which is about, as he put it, time being well spent and getting something out of whatever relationship is being created, and that the driving force for creating Bizbash is that we're all collaboration artists. And then social engineering, which he defined as using social events to basically get what you want. And that was just really, that was an interesting take on it.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, I thought that, when you really think about what he's talking about, what he's saying is that, he really does see events as an art form, and art's ability to transform the way we see the world and shape the way we live. And he's seeing no difference. And then he is taking it to this next place of what events can represent as this art form, and that he does see this as such a collaborative endeavor and bringing people together just in every way, both as a B2B way and also for the guests at the event. It's just, I love his take on that.
Yeah. And what's behind all of this for him is really, as he said, it's stretching the use of events to market. And so this was interesting to me. When you're talking to people in the room, you're really reaching hundreds or thousands of people because of their influencers. That was really fascinating. He's right.
Well, he is. And I also think that what he's talking about, which is such a challenge today, for every event, whether it's social or corporate, or you have an agenda, which is that it's about storytelling, right? So the event is to tell a story for whatever it's about. And today, you're not just telling the story for the people that are attending the event that may talk about the event. So, for instance, a corporate event might use press, but today it's also the people that are actually at the event sharing their experience of the event as the event is happening. So it's not just, hey, someone's tweeting, oh, I'm at this party and having a great time. Well, that's relevant. That's actually not what I think he's talking about. What I think he's talking about, which is fascinating, is the idea that as you get together on a human level at the event, it's also having the people that are experiencing the event, then sharing that experience as they're experiencing it with their followers, people that they're influencing. And therefore, that human experience is then spread out to the world. I think that's the grand vision he has. And I think it's super cool.
Yeah, it becomes exponential, really, in a sense. And, add to that the face-to-face element at events, and how it builds trust and therefore leads to better relationships, which thereby then gets you more business. And
Yep.
and he feels that, this works even better than digital relationships, and how, everything is so experiential now, and how we have to keep upping our game because competition is becoming more fierce for an even more engaging experience. And again, as he said, with media going out the window, the event is the new town square and the water cooler. So creating a platform. I loved how he said that. It's like the new town square and the water cooler.
That part I really, really enjoy. And it's the idea of connectivity and the idea that we live in a world where we don't have to have that many places. We don't have that mass level of communication anymore, right? It's not just that we can't stand around, right? But also that we can't stand around and talk about the same thing, right? Because we're so bifurcated in whatever we're experiencing. And that this is that one occasion where we're all coming together and literally experiencing the same thing together as human beings, as a collective. And I love that idea.
Well, yeah. And it's not, with everything that's going on with social media and digital, we're losing that face-to-face element, and people don't want to be on the phone as much as they want to. I'm generalizing, but as much as people want to just text and send an email. And so I think the power of events has become even more so. It's like we're going back, it's like old school. It's the in-person, it's the relationship. It's being able to communicate directly and see people's expressions on their faces and be emotive. It's a whole nother level of communication.
Well, I think so. It's also being authentic. I think what the word that he didn't use a lot, that probably he would want to, is saying that the event is an authentic expression of yourself, right? And so we live in a world where you can kind of make yourself up, and it's not that you can't do that in the live sense, but it's much harder, and it's also not as meaningful as if you're just really true to what you're about as you have these events, right? And you bring people together to have that experience collectively. Right. So it becomes authentic. Yeah.
It's so interesting because as we speak, I am recording from my hotel room in Orlando at a major podcast conference called Podcast Movement. And it's just beginning. We had one session today. Tonight's like an opening party. And this is all so apropos for me as I walk around the room. Like tonight, I'm going to this event, and that's what it's about. It's talking to people, and like you say, being authentic, and people love that. When it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
So also, I loved how some of the terms he used as far as the future. He's really on top of technology. When we got together, it was in person. He was speaking in Washington, D.C., and that's where we met. And he was so excited about showing me technology and what he's discovering, what he's learning about. Before we got on the microphone, we spent like 20, 30 minutes with him just showing me what's happening and what's coming down the pike. And one of them, which he started to talk about during the interview, is augmented reality. And being able to read like a printed magazine page and hold a smartphone or some kind of glasses, and it looks like a computer screen. And so basically also focusing on spatial computing, where the room, it's so hard to explain with words, but he showed me some examples of where the room is the screen. And so we will program the room. So for example, if you've got a glass, of water on the table, you'll turn the glass, which is like moving the mouse, and so it becomes a shared reality. And for example, surgeons, you'll be able to walk inside of a heart if you're teaching medicine, or you can watch a play that is happening right on your desk. And he says, this is the future of decor.
Oh, I think that he's right. What augmented reality and virtual reality and stuff, I'm just as obsessed as he is with what it's about, and having that spatial stuff. It's this idea that you can take human interaction to this whole other level, and that you can create these environments where the traditional constraints don't exist anymore, right? The idea of, being limited by whatever physicality is doesn't have to be. And, it doesn't take a lot to look at the dragon flying around the Korean soccer stadium, when everyone who has augmented reality can see this dragon flying, in the Korean stadium, right? And so that kind of experience where we're now experiencing these things that could never have existed in real time, of course, dragons don't exist. Or if they do, not the way.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Not the way that
they don't.
were.
But
they were good. I don't know.
What about Game of Thrones? They exist.
There you go. I know I'm probably burst in a bubble. And if they do, I'm sorry.
You're right.
But that whole idea of using technology to create this this new and different human experience is something that I know that just so many people want to crack, which is it's this blend of digital and analog, right? How do we come together, but then experience things that are limitless together, right? In real time. And then what he's talking about is just, I think is super cool, is having that virtual experience happen together as we're existing, right? And so that's and that we can experience it. And that is the popularity of all the AR, games like the Harry Potter ones, the new Star Wars one, and all the Pokemon, all that stuff. It's just, that's why it is. It's because then we could experience this virtual experience in real time.
Oh, can you imagine when this comes to events, as a regular course? Yeah. And I'll bet soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it's next year. Yeah. And also, related to all of this, and again, kind of bringing back or connected to what we were talking about earlier, he also came up with a term, I don't know if it's his or not, but radical humanization, in which he was saying you take your employees to lunch, hear what they have to say. And that conferences, now this I didn't totally get, but he said conferences are going to be spending more time on one-on-one conversations with people, going off script, breaking the fourth wall, but way more one-on-one at conferences.
I agree. I mean, look, I know what he's talking about is the idea of really making sure that we don't lose the idea of that we're human beings really who are designed to be social, right? And designed to connect with each other and learn from each other's experiences and take away with it what we will. And I think that's really what he's talking about. And, it spans generations and it spans all of the things that he's talking about. And I think that's what he's actually really trying to accomplish with his businesses, right? Which is just to make them as interactive as they can, as social as they can. So that everybody can be committed to learning from each other and then take what they learn and do something with it.
Yes. And how about when he talked about code switching? It's so interesting because today at this conference, the one session I was in, it was like a little early thing before it really kicks off. They were talking about code switching, which, as I understand it, is, we all have different ways of communicating and talking to different people. Like we have a certain way, or let's say a code of talking to parents. And then we have a different way with friends, a different way with teachers, a different way with our social media. And there's all this code switching going on. And the context of this conversation with David was that technology is also going to impact how we behave at events and how we perceive events and how we behave with each other. And he was referring to code switching.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a fancy term for trying to be related to people where they are, but then trying to blow up the way those conversations happen.
Yeah.
And getting that opportunity to kind of change the dialogue and change things, I think is a really fascinating way of being, right? Which is changes perception about what it is that we're doing and everything that we're doing. And what I really love about Julie too, because he's so immersed in Washington. He grew up in Washington, and that whole conversation. And when you really talk about code switching, it's about the ultimate marketing, right? And getting people to perceive you as you would be perceived, wish to be perceived. And so when you talk about those that would change the world and the way politics work and all the things that he was bringing back, I think code switching is a massive topic. It's awesome hearing him talk about it.
Yeah, and related to all this, it was interesting. Given that he's like the king of events, I asked him what he feels about networking and the advice. And do you remember how he said that he hates the word networking?
I loved it when he said that. It was great.
Yeah. And because he talked, what did he say? I'm trying to remember. Oh, he said it feels like gossip, and that it's just, you're talking to other people. You got to be interested in others. And it's best. What you're doing is getting to know people, obviously, and their needs, and seeing, this is what I love, seeing if you can solve something for them. And so don't call it networking. That's what it's about. Be your real self. Don't go to hit on people, or, be authentic. It comes back to that again, right? Don't always look for something.
Look, and that to me is what I think is really fascinating, right? So if I really heard what he was saying about networking is like, you're not there to seal a deal, right? You're not there to try to get people to do something with you. What he said is you should be there to listen. You should be there to say, oh, how could I add value here? How could I try to think about what they're trying to solve and solve it with them, right? And maybe they're not even thinking about what they really need to be solving. And let me try to do that, which is something I talk about all the time, is, solve a different problem. We're going to think about other things that are there. And you can only do that if you're really present to what someone is there talking to you about, whatever they are about.
Yes.
Well, you're really good at what you're doing, right? Because you can really just listen to somebody and hear what they have to say. And without an agenda that, hey, that's going to turn into business or that's going to turn into something. I like that quite a bit.
And also with that kind of a perspective, Sean, obviously we don't have to feel as much pressure, right? And expectations when we go to conferences, when we go to events, that we have to get business from this person and that person. Just be, again, that word authentic, like you say, just simply be there and listen to people, and people are going to connect. And I believe that in some serendipitous way, you will be brought, like today, I'm sitting at this conference, and look, even although everyone thinks I'm this great extrovert with the podcast, when it comes to me going to a conference where I don't really know people, because I really don't know anyone much at this particular one. And I go to this one big session, and the room is jam-packed, and there's a seat next to this woman. I sit down. Turns out she's like one of these major podcasters who I've learned a lot from hearing her speak. I just didn't connect that was her. And then we started to talk and had a really great conversation. And you just don't know who you're going to run into. And I think if you put yourself out there, and if you do just be yourself, you're going to run into eventually, percentage-wise, you're going to run into the right people who you need to run into. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, great.
And before we wrap up, one of the things he said too, which I loved, he said the best way to have an impact, in terms of related to, you don't look at it as networking. Don't try to always get something for yourself. The best way to make an impact is to take a leadership role in something. Leadership and contributing your time, he said, pays back in spades, and get to know people in a non-selling atmosphere. Have deep relationships with people, and they will want to give you the business.
Well, I take from that, yes, of course, and to do and make an impact in what you're doing. What I really take that from him is to say, choose yourself, right? Choose yourself, get out there and do what you do believe in and live in that space. And that to me is what he's talking about, is like go find yourself in a way of making a difference no matter what it is, and just choose yourself. Yeah. Choose yourself to say what you care about and do what you can do, whether that's, again, he's from Washington and politics. If that means helping out a local campaign, go do that. If that means like getting part of a, whatever you want to do, whatever nonprofit, whatever work that gets you in that place, you will learn more, right? Choosing yourself and putting yourself out there than by just basically, saying, well, I hope I do a really good job and get another job, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is all that we have time for today. I want to thank everyone for listening. And Sean, thanks again for being on the show. Always love having you on the show and talking like you do, hearing what you have to say. And the site for Sean is thebusinessofbeingcreative.com. thebusinessofbeingcreative.com. Be sure to check that out again, and his blog. Highly recommend it. Also, I want to say that Sean is this incredible consultant who works one-on-one and also has something called The Collective, which is a way to sit down with a group of people, right? You do that weekly. How can people find out more about The Collective?
Oh, just go to the website. It's the bbccollective.com. And for those specifically in the event business, wedding business, and you can, we talk about all topics, and we have a weekly call and Facebook group, and I post something every week that we talk about, and we communicate all the time. And it's really about those people that want to really make a difference in the way the industry is perceived, the way they're perceived, move their business forward, make radical change, and very much in keeping with what David is talking about today, really seeing the future and giving it a shot. That's what that's about.
Yeah, it's great. So check that out, everyone. And for David, the site, of course, is bizbash.com. His social media handles are the same, Bizbash. And want to ask that you also follow us, The Wedding Biz, on Instagram in particular at The Wedding Biz. You'll be able to get a lot of good notifications there. And please share this episode if you can. It really helps people to find us even better, and giving us a great review is good. Next week's episode is going to be all about Ali Barone of Ali Barone Creations, a multi-dimensional consulting and design corporation specializing in creative interior and outdoor transformations. And some of you might already know Ali's name. And if not, you're going to find out why she is somewhat well known from being on a certain TV show for a couple of years. And so check in next week to hear about that. Also want to thank our sponsor for today, and that's Kushner Entertainment, offering high-touch service with the highest level of music and entertainment available for events. KushnerEntertainment.com. And we'll catch you all next week on The Wedding Biz.